All right, guys, and we're back. We are back. I think we have something else, but we have no echo this time.
Good.
We so we good to go, guys. As we started the program, I have a few questions I wanted to get into in terms of the mental health and in terms of the youth. You guys are both persons who are medical professionals, I would say, especially you, Dr. Chiffy, who is someone who is a clinical psychologist. So I expect you would be able to answer those questions. My first question to you guys is in mental health. Would you classify it as an illness like any other illness, like a common cold or a broken hand? How would you classify that? Mental health is it an illness like a regular illness?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, many of them are. Let's say many of them are. Um, so mental health, I like to think of as brain health versus just mental. I think very often when we think of mental health, we forget that it's because sometimes our brain is not working correctly
Right.
biologically, like biologically, the same way, say, your insulin. Nurse Chris will talk more about that. If your insulin is off in your body, you might go into a diabetic coma, right? Or a shock. For some people, depending on how their dopamine in their brain is working or not working, they might end up in the hospital because their thoughts will get all scrambled, or they might start to hear voices. They'll have different perceptual experiences that other people are not having, right? They might have hallucinations. They might see things other people aren't seeing. Some people, their anxiety is so high, mm, because of the way their brain is working. It's same for depression. It's really a lot about hormones and neurotransmitters and how that's working for the very serious mental health issues. Now, of course, I could go to therapy because I broke up with my boyfriend. That's a different kind of set of problems that I would be working with, where I would say, well, no, that's not necessarily like an illness, like biologically based. It's just a transition. I'm going through a little change in life. Or I might go to a therapist because I want to become better, stop procrastinating. That's not necessarily a biological thing. Yeah. I might just
Right.
need to some new strategies. But yes,
It
a
is a
serious mental health illness, yes, it's a body thing.
So Dr. Chrissy, you from
right.
from
I,
from yeah, go ahead.
I'll take the doctor. Yes, I'll take the doctor. Yes, I think any illness that requires a person to undergo some form of therapy, whether it's through drugs, medication, or counseling, or any type of therapy, it is a form of illness, just like mental illness, like Dr. Triffy was saying. Mental illness deals with the mind, while you may have another illness that deals with the heart and different organs in the body. So, yes, it is a form. Mental illness can be considered. It can be in a milder stage, or it can be in a more serious state where the person may eventually need hospitalization and stuff like that, and more therapy. But it is a form of illness, yes.
Mhm.
You mute. You mute.
my, my question to you guys is someone only mentally ill when they are diagnosed, or do we have many undiagnosed cases walking around in society?
Well, let me see, Dr. Triffy.
Go ahead.
Diagnosis is how you call that? It confirms that yes, the person has that condition and they need to be treated. But somebody can have mental illness and go undiagnosed for years based on the symptoms that they exhibit. So if you can assess somebody by just having a conversation or being in their space for a short period of time, and you can detect even a non-medical person who'd listen to somebody speak and say, Mr. Mad or she mad, because of the things that they say, the behavior that they exhibit, some of the symptoms that they have, you may be able to detect that that person has a mental issue. But once that person seeks the medical help that they need, and a doctor determines that yes, that person is mentally ill, so they would diagnose that person mentally ill, and then it would, they would require further treatment. But yes, they can have undiagnosed mentally ill patients and persons.
But it's interesting that you mentioned that they thought that people say Mr. Mad. How do you think that affects persons? Like, sometimes you interact with persons on a regular basis, and your friend would say, "Boy, you madman." Does that affect the person psychologically, Dr. Triffy?
I mean, it depends. I think it depends. When we're speaking in Dominica
Yes.
language, that's an easy thing for you to say. That's why you're mad, like as if. But that mad doesn't mean mentally ill. That mad could mean your thinking is just off. I don't see it coming. Right. But there are some people. I think there's another category of people we say that person crazy, man. That person mad, man. I think that's part of what Chris is saying, where you can see that person's behavior is not the norm. It is very far from what you, as a rational thinking person, would do. And you see a lot of our friends and our relatives or family or supervisors, we see and we're like, that person must be mad, but they're walking around and they're functioning. They're functioning. That's a different level too. And a lot of that goes undiagnosed. A lot of that goes undiagnosed. But then you have people who have been confirmed, right? They have a clear diagnosis because a professional gave them that diagnosis.
Right.
But I was going to say, I don't know if it's old people, but a lot of people say, inipli dewaki adidan. There are a lot more people who are not getting treated for mental health, who are outside walking around. They're in our homes. They're in our homes and they really need help, but we call it different things. I was saying earlier on in my life that we might say, boy, me still like to fight. Me still like to fight. That is potentially diagnosable. But that girl, they like a conquer. That girl always blowing things out of proportion. That person perhaps has histrionic personality disorder. You see, or maybe or they're highly irritable because they're depressed. But because we don't have, I think, enough professional services like access, if you have access, you would quickly go to somebody and confirm, does this child suffer from something? Is my partner, could they do better if they went and saw a therapist? But because we don't have these options, I think you just put it in that Mr. Bad or that person crazy. I don't deal with that person, mind me move that person there. Because that person is not the norm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So would you classify depression as a form of mental illness?
Oh, yes.
Go ahead, Chrissy. Yeah, definitely.
Yes, definitely. Depression is a form of illness. Again, depression comes in different forms. And you may have those persons who going through a depression for different reasons. Where one form might be a breakup, a relationship breakup, or probably a job loss. That person, right, with the with the right help, with the right therapies, they might be able to resolve what the issue is, and heal from it. While some form of depression, doesn't matter what area it is, again, because of the different persons and the environment and whatever it is, they will need more help. So because those persons are, example, they become very suicidal. They depressed to a point where they lack that social set. They don't want to be out with people. They lock themselves away in the house, and lock their doors and everything, and they sit in this dark room all day. Those are the kind of persons who would require more psychiatric
Professional help.
exactly
Higher
right.
level of professional help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christy is actually very correct. Depression shows itself in how many different ways. Yeah, but you'd be looking for classic things like the person lost their appetite, or their appetite increased. You would look at a period of 2 weeks. If those symptoms are existing for about 2 weeks, your appetite increased significantly or it decreased significantly. Or your sadness, you lost pleasure in things you used to find pleasurable. I mean, people, like Chrissy says, they start to isolate, where they're like, it's a big word, but she just described it, where you don't want to go out anymore. You're like, man, I don't have taste. I don't want to go. I don't have goo for that. I'm just going to hang out at home. Your friends used to go clubbing, used to go partying every Saturday. Now you're like, when people start to lose attention for their vanity, their face, they don't care how they go outside anymore. Their lipstick, they used to like lipstick, they're not in that. Their hair, just put a cap on their head, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, and they're gone. So those are things you look for. Go ahead.
Those
Yeah,
are
those are ways that
question
depression
there.
might look. That's how depression really looks like in real life. For some people, they become highly irritable.
Yeah.
I see we have a question there from one of our viewers. Professor Bruno is asking is alcoholism a symptom of some sort of mental ailment? And if so, what does that mean that several Dominicans at one time or the other suffered or is suffering from that condition?
Yes. So you have something called dual diagnosis. Okay. So think about it. Think about it in your, like a rational person. Do you see yourself becoming an alcoholic to the point where, say, you need about 2 drinks a day? You wake up and you need a drink. People are telling you at home, you need to stop, but you cannot stop. You don't stop, right? Do you see yourself doing that, like just out of the blue? No. More often than not, you have 2 categories of people who become addicted. Some people have a predisposition in their brain. Again, it's the brain based on their biology. You look in their history, the father, grandfather, sometimes it skips a generation, was an alcoholic, right? They drank a lot, or they smoked a lot, or they were addicted to something. They were addicted to food, or they were addicted to whatever. Yeah. And then you have some people who you might have had experienced a traumatic event, and then you start using to cope with the pain you feel. So it's a way for many people to escape. They start off that way, and then their brain builds a tolerance to it. Now they cannot stop. Now they need more to get the same effect. So it just becomes you just keep tumbling down into the abyss of addiction. But a lot of our people are suffering from a lot of trauma that is not addressed, is unhealed. I bet you if I go home now and I talk to 10 alcoholics, I will expect that 10 out of 10 of them experience some form of trauma.
Yep.
Okay? And it could be something as simple as one day my dad came home and he beat me till I was blue. But that was the way we did things. And so it wasn't considered a problem. But me, my little self, cannot get over it.
Right.
Yeah.
Guys, we're half an hour into the program. I mean, yes, we had some technical difficulties, and as well, Sherian is suffering some internet difficulties as well, so she may not be able to come back on. I need to ask though, are the youth more prone to mental illness, and if so, why?
Probably Dr. Triffy could tell you in her practice if she see
Yeah.
more youth than elderly, but I don't think mental illness has an age range. It can happen at any form, any time.
Right.
Sometimes even um as young as probably 8, 9 experience mental illness. Um, Even lower, even younger. Again, as Doctor was saying earlier, it could be from some trauma that happened either in the home or personally. So I don't see it as being more prevalent in the youth. It's just that if you have young persons at home and they displaying certain behavior that go undiagnosed or unrecognized, some people see it as troublesome. Um, you have a young person in the home who is always irritable or they always sad, you know, um, and they never pay attention to that. It can further escalate and lead to more, more, what do you call that?
More
Undiagnosed,
problems, more
untreated.
serious.
It can, right,
Yeah.
but you it comes in at any age.
I'm going to
I
give you a
can be
simple
here.
example. Yeah, go ahead, Chrissy.
Right. I could be at my age. As you know, they say there's a thin line between sane and
Mm-hmm.
insanity. Anything can happen to me now that I probably it's hard for me to cope with, and just like that,
Yes.
I go into some form of depression, and without the help it could actually lead to something more. So as I said, I don't think there is an age range for mental illness.
So I'm going to give you an example, Carlos.
Right.
Imagine a child at their mother's home, and the mother is telling you that that child, they don't like to listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes talking back at me. I tell them to do something. It takes them, I have to tell them 10 times before they follow my, um,
The
my little
instruction.
suggestion, my little instruction. That
Yes.
is diagnosable because
Yep.
that is not typical. That child could be suffering from attention problems, yeah, and maybe down the line of ADHD, attention
Mhm.
deficit, or that child could be oppositional, and oppositional to the point that if you don't learn how to, in Dominica, you say corriger that
Oh.
child.
Mhm.
If you don't, if my words as a parent are not causing change in that child, what happens to that child who becomes a teenager? That teenager is
Exactly.
always in what we call cancan.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Is disrespectful to teachers, gets expelled, gets suspended. The parents have to always go to school on behalf of that child. People in the village telling you, you should watch that child, why is she so
Mhm.
not like you now?
Mhm.
That is what that is.
Mhm.
So you have an oppositional defiant disorder brewing in a child. Some people, it morphs into where now they even start now stealing, they start fighting, they start doing all sorts of things. So that's just a youth now who becomes an adult, who some people take it to where they get into trouble with people, they cannot keep a job, they're still fussing as a 20-something-year-old. Because think about it, by the time you get to 20 something, you have learned communication skills to have a conversation and say, I was upset, this happened.
Mhm.
You come to an arrangement, right? And you quash the thing, you move forward, right? In your relationships. But there are people with personality disorders and behavior disorders who cannot do that. And if this was not caught, where that child was taught strategies, skills
But,
to be
but
able to make their way, it's going to keep causing problems for them and other people around them.
but is it a thing where the parents have something to do with um what you described?
Well, I did an internship. It was a pre-doctoral internship in a school system, and we were working with very severely emotionally troubled kids. And I would be working with the kids, and then the parents would come, and I would realize why the kids were having problems. More often than not, it's where the child is cooked. I like to say cook, but it's like, basically you baking a child, you have a baby comes out without anything, right? But it's the environment in which the child is raised, who corrects the child, how they correct the child, what the child sees, what happens, what trauma they experience, all that creates the adult, the eventual adult. So of
Right.
course, parents have a big role to play in the eventual adult, a huge role.
Exactly.
Sometimes, no matter what you do as a parent, that brain, the biology, might be working against what the words you're using, right? Or the way you treat the child. Sometimes that biology, like you asked about earlier, but more often than not, is the environment that shapes the child.
Right.
So do
Can I
you
just excuse me 1 minute?
what?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Do-
environment, Carlos, also means like trauma, like what happens. Because sometimes things don't happen in the house.
right.
The child might experience people bullying them in school, right? They might
Right.
have an accident, even something like a physical accident where a child has to go to the hospital. That can change a child to make a child become more anxious. So your anxiety, high, high, high. And
Mhm.
no, there was no therapist. Over here, you have social workers on the unit who talk to you, right? You have psychiatrists who are there, even if you go for a broken bone.
Mhm.
After my fiance died, I experienced something called broken heart syndrome, where I had to go to the hospital because it was like I was having a heart attack. Of course, after they did the testing,
So you get a
it's
real good well.
a real go up well, let me tell you, a real go up well, like seriously. And they did a scan and they saw no damage to my physical heart. But clearly, something brought me to the hospital.
Right.
So what did they do? They had me speak to the psychiatrist on staff who said, okay, you're a psychologist. What is going on? Because it's not your physical heart. And I said, I just lost my fiance. They're like, okay, that makes sense. This is why. This is Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. You have a heart. You almost had a heart attack, which can happen. Like Chrissy says, you're walking around through life and you're fine. You're okay. Yeah. But
Mhm.
you get you get a knock in life. If you don't watch out, you can just keep getting sicker and sicker. You might not be able to get out of the depression if you don't do certain things, to heal. And so that's how mental health can develop for a lot of us.
So now that we have identified that it exists, do you
Hmm.
think that enough is being done to address this, especially in the Dominican context?
Absolutely not. That's a clear absolutely not. I think even in general, people have a kind of way they think about mental health,
The
as
stigma.
if it's a stigma, as if you are crazy if you are suffering from depression. I say you're not crazy, you're a human being. You're a human being. I don't know anybody in life, I myself don't know, that by the time you get to 50, you don't hit a little shagway.
Right.
By the time you hit 50, you haven't hit a little shagway, you would have had to be mentally, disabled. You know what I mean? If you weren't
Someone
mentally disabled, you would never have had a little crush. You
there,
understand?
there are person who have said they have never gotten a hope well before. They have
Well,
never.
by the time you hit 50, well, I would have to ask more about your history. How were you doing? For me, I would ask more about your history. How come? You would have to be very lucky to get to 50 without having had one little breakup or one
Right.
thing in your life where you lost somebody and it hurt a lot, or a big disappointment. Yeah, I don't know many people who go through life unscathed. So I wouldn't believe that person. But yeah, um, at some point, you're going to face a mental health challenge.
Right. Right.
Some
Right.
point.
And
Yeah.
what is the best way, in your professional opinion, to reach youth with mental illness?
Okay. So I would, one, I would, so you can go from top down or you can go from bottom up.
Right.
Most well-established countries and societies, they do both. They have good they have good medical care for all of their people, you know, but they also come down to the community. They are community based. For 20 something years, I worked as a community based mental health service provider, where we would send teams. We would have a licensed therapist, and we would have at least two, they're called paraprofessionals, mental health, who would go to the families' homes, to the child's home, to their school, to the playground, if we needed to bring the mental health services to them. So a parent calls, and these are state-funded contracts, meaning the state, the country, is paying for mental health services for everybody, including poor people.
So it's not a situation like the stigma in Dominica where somebody crazy, you give them an injection and for them to walk straight.
No, stigma or not, because there are so many different levels of mental health need. There's some people, like Chris is saying, they do need an injection to help their brain balance the way it's shooting out the neurotransmitters to make it to where, okay, now they're no longer hearing voices. They're no longer seeing things that you're saying you're not seeing. But for the most part, a lot of us, our kids, if they're acting up in school, what they need is to learn some social skills, or they need to learn how to quiet themselves or regulate their emotions so they're not just all over the place.
But we don't get that in the Caribbean, though, which is a very sad part. We don't really get that much help, or persons, I should say, don't get help. If you look at the small communities in Dominica, when you're mad, people see you as an outcast, you know, and a lot of persons who have mental illness don't go for help for that same reason.
Yeah.
Because they're being stigmatized, and, you know, persons see them as, oh, you're mad, and that's it. And they walk around the village as a nuisance. But as you were saying, if you have that support where persons can go to those persons, to those homes, and help the people, then that would make a good impact. That would help a lot.
Very stabilizing. It's very stabilizing for, and again, not just wealthy people. There are many wealthy people who have insurance, right? They can go to their private doctor. To the poor people. And what I think about for Dominica is, I understand we don't have a lot of money, but you have to start where you are with what you have and do the best you can. Even if you had to enroll volunteers, where you had to train mental health professionals. There's something called psychological first aid, where you can train many just lay people to take care of each other in the community, right? Think about like when you have a natural disaster. I know they send us brogodo and clothes, but do you not see how many people need mental health support after a big storm? There are people still struggling with David now.
Having gone through Maria, I can tell you it's very traumatizing.
It is.
Or even COVID, the recent COVID, the increase in mental health persons, you know, have gone, the rate has gone up. So
even
because persons lost their jobs.
I'm just think about it. Like, you have kids in the 2-year college, you have kids in the high schools. At a certain, say maybe from third form, you could start training volunteers. Let them have to do volunteer service, right? As part of their graduation. You train them, you have people who mentor them to provide community-based mental health support. You know, there are many ways to do that without having to spend a lot of money. You know what I mean? If money is the issue, there are many ways to do that without having to spend a lot of money. There are many templates that exist right now in many other countries. I'm saying, if I'm curious about providing that kind of support, I go do the research.
But again, if the support is there, people have to be willing. Some persons don't, they fail to identify. First of all, you have to know, you have to think to yourself that I have a problem. You have to admit it for you to want the help. Sometimes the help is available, but persons will not go for the help because, again, the stigma that's attached to it.
You know what? There are ways to work around that. Like, say, at least for people in school.
Well, yeah.
if you can catch that bucket, right? Where like clearly teachers are going to see that child as a problem. And I think they're doing, I know for sure, I know at least one school-based, education-based counselor who's doing that in the schools, but I know that is overwhelming. The need is greater than her capacity, so I think maybe adding volunteers where you train people who they're not licensed, yes, and they didn't go do the masters yet, but they know enough to be able to support you. So you have, like I said, we would send a licensed person, and we would train 2 paraprofessionals who didn't have to be licensed, but who could teach certain skills. But you need bodies, you need human beings doing the work,
So, guys, I love the way the discussion is going. Some of the things that you're saying, you're answering, you're actually answering some of the questions that I already planned to ask you guys. Let me bring up this point though. Is that the actual medication and drugs can that be considered one of the best remedies for mental illness?
The word best, is it considered the best? Again, Carlos, you have to look at the level, or if that person really need the medication or if they just need therapy. For some persons, medication is the best, because that's the only, they've reached a point where counseling is not going to help. As doctor was saying, it's the brain. So it's not functioning like how we function.
How a normal person is supposed to.
Right. So they would need the medication to bring that back into alignment. But there are those who do not need medication, and yet they are being medicated.
Right.
So it may not always be the best, but you have to assess. That is why you have the diagnosis, or you have the persons go for professional help. And once they've assessed that person, then they decide, or they can help the person which area they need to take. That person probably just needs some counseling, some guidance, some therapy, whatever, or that person needs to see a doctor.
Yeah.
Because it's beyond just talking and helping them to cope. It's more than that. We need to get that person brain back in alignment. So it may not always be the best, but it is necessary in certain illnesses.
The same way that you need insulin to regulate your body, the same way you need medications for your hypertension to get back, whatever, right? The same way that if you have cancer, you need certain medications. The same way a person who has schizophrenia is going to need medication. A person who has bipolar disorder is going to need medication. And there are some people who try to do it without it, but they end up, which is called decompensating. They break down often. It's like a car. The car, you come into the world and your body is the car, right? The physical car. Your engine needs certain things for it to work, but certain cars need certain things. There are some cars, if you don't put high-grade fuel in it, it's going to break down.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, so that's what it is for some people. And schizophrenia is very prevalent, In the most intense case, you'll see our people on the road because they're not unmedicated, they cannot work. How are they going to feed themselves? Very often, if you have a person with bipolar disorder that's not treated, that person is always in arguments, they're not agreeing with their people at their home. So people think they're just being bad. They think Mr. Bad, Mr. just like to fight. Mr. always arguing with me. I don't like Mr. He taking my thing, you know what I'm saying? But if that person can get the proper medication after, as Chris is saying, a proper assessment and diagnosis, professionals in every field know what they're doing. If my car is broken down, I'm not going to the nurse.
Exactly.
If my car is broken down, I'm not going to the pastor. No. So you go to a professional who knows what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Okay. I know a lot of us have negative feelings about medication in a certain way. Because I grew up in Dominica, it took me a long time to really see over time and based on my experience that there were some people who I could not treat with my therapy. My therapy alone was not working, and I'm a good therapist. You understand? I knew that these people, okay, your brain needs a little more. This is not just you bad mind.
Mm-hmm.
Or what least. You understand? You're not just doing this on purpose. Or you're lazy, you just work harder, go pray more, or you need to meditate more. Your brain doesn't care about your prayer. It's
Have you,
biology and chemistry. Okay?
sorry,
Yeah.
have you guys been able to identify the root causes of the mental health, and especially in the youth?
Biology is a big, I'm going to put biology in its, you always have to give biology its seat at that table. Because I don't care how great your parents are. I don't care if you went to church every day. If you have a family history in your bloodline of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, high anxiety,
Pass it down.
risk is higher. Depending on how much stress you get hit with in life, that is going to show itself up way earlier than for other people. So for young people who perhaps they have that family history, and they get faced with, I don't have job, I go to school, I cannot work, this, that, and the other, pressure on the brain, their vulnerability is higher. Okay, their vulnerability is higher. So that predisposition biologically is a big deal. You have to account for that. But you also have to account for the stresses in the environment. My girlfriend leaves me. That's a natural chagrin. You understand? That's a natural well window that's opening for me if I don't have support. If I have people around me who they know they're even laughing at me, they're making it worse, right? Or if I'm somewhere where I don't have family support to help me through that breakup, I could go down the rabbit hole of depression. So it depends.
But Nurse Chrissy, who do you think should take a greater responsibility for caring for persons, especially the youth with mental illness? The government, the communities, family. How in your own assessment should it work?
Well, there's an old saying that goes, it takes a community to raise a child. There's no one person that is mainly responsible. There are persons who are professionals that can assist with, once that person is brought to them, then they can assist. But it starts in the home. It starts with the family support. But again, as Doc was saying, if there is a family history of mental illness, then one may not be able to help the other. But in reality, it starts in the home. It starts by identifying from a very young age the child's behavior and not to overlook certain things or the way the child would behave. The child goes to church, and persons may tend to call the child rude or disrespectful because of the behavior, and that again is overlooked. If church members can identify certain things and say, well, I suspect your son or your daughter is behaving irrational or doing them kind of things, maybe they need, and at school as well, the teacher, everybody. So it's a whole community to help the youth or the person who they perceive might have that condition or predisposed to it. Some persons may know that I come from a family with that condition, mental health, illness, and based on how I behave, they might be able to say something to, say, your teacher, get that child some help. And if the teacher is so much inclined, or some teachers, they don't care. You might say something to a teacher like, watch that child, I think, and they brush it off. Like, but if they really take the interest of their students at heart, they might want to refer the child to a counselor and see how they can assist. From the youth standpoint or from an adult standpoint, it doesn't matter what age range, it takes everybody to assist when come to mental illness. It has no one person, but of course there are those who are professionally trained to assist with that in a more professional way. You're muted.
You're on mute.
So as a follow-up, do you think that the Dominican society is adequately informed about the plight of the youth?
I would say yes. Persons, every community have, doesn't matter how big the village is, we tend to know each other. Right. Everybody know everybody. So whether it's in Capuchin or Portsmouth or wherever, you tend to know the persons in that community who exhibiting those kind of symptoms. So yes, they have an idea, they may know, but how invested are they? How invested is the person in the community? How much do we care about the person around us, and whether that person is mad or what we can do? Because again, you have to bear in mind the individual, because of course the stigma, as we said earlier, some persons don't want people to get into their business, or you try to speak to them, and person, again, because of their mental illness, they become defensive, and people take that as, me, I leave in that person alone, that kind of thing. So you have to be invested. You have to want to get help for that person, and the person themselves have to want it. So I think the community on a whole in Dominica, they know persons, people know the persons within the community who need the help. Some persons don't care, while others take interest. So I'm not sure. I don't know if Miss Wallace, probably you can shed more light on that in Dominica, where that concern.
Yeah, because my next follow-up question was to her. I want her to, so I want to ask her, in your professional opinion, what can we do? What can we do to in our own separate ways to assist with youth mental illness?
I think Dominica is small enough that if we had a great public service campaign that was very focused and consistent on raising public awareness,
right,
about mental health, about normalizing mental health and the need to reach out for services. I think that's a good place to start, because Chris is right. We are dealing with a lot of built into our culture resistance to looking for help when it comes to mental health, when it comes to brain health. We think it's a weakness. We think people are going to talk bad about us. We think we are supposed to be perfect. We have a lot of perfectionism built into Dominica's system, where people talk about you, where it seems to hurt our feelings a lot when people say any negative thing about us. So if you have a culture where, oh, she mad with that child rude, you understand? We take it personally as parents. We think we did a horrible job, but I'm trying to let Dominica parents know it's brain stuff. It's also very, it's a big culprit, brain stuff. Plus, there's a lot of trauma that your kids couldn't explain to you. Very often, the way we parent our kids, we learned it from parents who used to whip us a lot, who used to give us volley a lot. And a lot of us, we thought to raise our kids. And we traumatized many of our kids who were very sensitive. There's some kids who their little soul is breaking when you're whooping them like that. Because they're like, aren't you supposed to love me? Why are you doing me? Why are you hurting me? There are a lot of us parents, again, we think we're the boss in the house. We come in and the kids are like nothing in the house. And so the words many of our Dominican parents use to children, it breaks their spirit. That is trauma. That is trauma. And so these kids are now trying to figure themselves out. They're going to school, they're acting up. People calling them rude, they're in the streets, they're fighting. We think that is, oh, they're just being bad, or they're just, I don't understand that one now. That one needs help. That one needs help. Those there, they need help. Those who cannot focus in school, they need help. A lot of them need evaluations early on, testing, so we can put them in the right academic programs. So a lot of people make their way through the youth part of their life, struggling, suffering. We have many late bloomers who, many of them, when they go somewhere else outside of Dominica, they go for help because now it's available and it's okay. And so they get help. They go to a therapist, right? They might get medication. They're in more supportive environments. We have to do better with creating supportive environments for our youth. We are too critical. We are very critical in Dominica. We have to ease up on that and understand our worth. Understand your child is as worthy of, I'm thinking right now of Mont Blanc, how they raise their kids, right? We say, oh, they're training their children to be rude because they're not hard on their kids. Well, when I look in life and I see the people who make a lot of the money, a lot of them raise in that kind of way where people allow them to make mistakes. People allow them to be who they are. They're very nurturing. They're very supportive. They're very, very supportive to their children. We have to change, I think, a lot of the way we are with our kids, because that's where I use the word cook, but parents and the home is where it starts. The home is where it starts when it comes to who am I creating in the world? You understand? And I know we're dealing with brain issues, but if you see your child is not acting like other people's children, they always getting in trouble. People always talking bad about them. They're doing something that other people are seeing is not the norm. Your job as a parent is to seek help. And it starts at home. For me, I cannot put that on the government at that tiny level. At that tiny level, it's not the government's responsibility to create a safe home for your child. Okay? It's your job. You see your child you have 5 kids, you have 6 kids. You see that one, no matter how I talk to that one a little coshy, a little sideways, that one needs support. And if that child needs support, more than likely, that adolescent is going to need support. When that adolescent becomes an adult, they're going to need support. Because we keep facing our problems in life depending on our developmental level. So you might think, oh, the child fixed way, but then something might happen in the adolescent life. You see it come up again. They fix way, adult life, you see it come up again. At every stage, they need support. That's it. We just have to find the support. When it comes to the community, I'm suggesting that the people whoever is dealing with our mental health, from a governmental level, that they consider training community-based people. There's free stuff. Like I said, psychological first aid is one model they can use where you train people like as if, when you have a disaster, you train people to do first aid. Well, you can do it for mental health.
We have district medical officers and the district agricultural officers.
Yes. We have to look at, because if your physical health is good and your mental health is off, the amount you produce or what you produce is going to be less than if you're feeling okay.
Right.
If I'm depressed, I'm not going to study, A lot of our kids, they don't even know how to study. They don't want to study. They're frustrated. They're anxious. They cannot take tests in school. It's impacting what they end up producing. And if it impacts what the individual produces, does it not impact what the country produces as a whole? So we have to think about our people in that way. if we're thinking about Dominica, we have to think about individual people in that way. And I think if we think Dominica is worthy, we have to treat our individual people like we're worthy. And if people don't want to treat you like you're worthy, you have to understand that for yourself and start acting that way. Yeah, but I definitely think it starts at home. We have to learn more. If we're going to do something as big as having kids, if you're going to do something as important as having a child, why would I not learn as much as I can about parenting and about my child's possible struggles with mental health and physical health, you know? Yeah,
But sometimes they don't know better.
but
A lot of
nowadays,
parents don't know better. So when the child start acting like that, that child is being punished even more and punished in the wrong way. So
Yeah.
you find even in school, they group that child with
Yeah.
the troublesome children. They put them in the lower class. Nobody taking note of them. The teachers find, I don't have time for this. So you have that group of children who never get the help that they need growing up into adult stage. So you're right where you say that it is important to train persons within the community to identify those students and help them out, or the youth, and help them out. Don't just
it's
push
very
them to a
important.
side.
It is so important, but I think we minimize these problems a lot. We push it up. We just put them in a category like Chris says, oh, they're bad. They're bad, but that right there, you could have a pilot in that bad group. You could have the person that figures out how to use your water to create some new, whatever, discovery,
Yeah.
So we have to provide our individuals with better support all the way around. If you want the best outcomes, if you don't really care, you understand, that's okay. But if you care, we have to figure out how to provide support to our people better than we're doing it now. I'm not being critical. I'm just saying, I think it's like that in many other Caribbean islands.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Not just Dominica.
Yeah, but there's so much information available that I don't think that needs to continue.
No, I look at a lot of news. I noticed that in certain instances, some persons who suffer from mental health end up getting shot.
Shot?
In the US.
Yep, shot.
Oh, shot. Okay.
Yes. Why is that? And is that the only answer?
It's not the only answer. And they're actually, because that has been a problem, they are fixing that. I'll tell you how. Police are trained to deal with criminals, right? They're trained to catch bad guys. So when you have police trying to, if you don't have training, you're going to work with what you have, with what you know. So I think, so when you have a person with a mental health problem, there are many people who they might have stopped taking their medication and they have a decompensation. They break down. They start, again, they want to fight. They want to fight with you. The police might be saying, come here. And they're like, Nowadays, because the community has recognized the problem of police not being trained to deal with people's problems. Now they actually have teams, right? Squad members who are trained to deal with people with mental health issues. There's a fix for every problem. A lot of it is education and training. But I know that takes time and that takes money and organization and all of that stuff. But you have to decide if your citizens are worthy of it. And they are worthy of it because the citizens are who create for the country.
Exactly.
No, all talk. So people, you know how it goes already. In Dominica, you get a little power. So a person might say, boy, you're alive now? Papa, mate, I say you die. How you get meg so? Boy, you get fatter? Does that contribute to stress and the mental health of a young person?
Yes.
I don't think getting meg or fatter.
No, but not the fact that you get meg, but it's the way that the person.
What you mean? Constant. Yes. Reinforcing to the person.
Yes, it may come off as nagging, or they may tell it to you in an environment or a place that you
meant to shame you, meant to
Yes,
shame. Of course,
yes,
yes.
yes, that
Dominique,
phrase, the
look,
size
culturally,
shaming.
Carlos, culturally, again, I think our people can be careless with each other in their
Mhm.
words. I think culturally, we think it's okay to call people names. Look at the number of people who have the worst and the most degrading nicknames. If you make a mistake as a kid, you might get labeled with a nickname that is the most
For
derogatory
life.
nickname,
Mhm.
right? For life. I think it's very easy for us to call each other bad names. Now, the thing is, you have zero control over people's words.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, there's nothing you can do. People can call you whatever names they want. They have
Yes,
a right to. It's their
I mean,
mouth.
I
They're
mean,
not
I
being
mean,
taxed.
it's our society. You're among your peers. You get a little power or something. You smile, and say, but
Yeah.
if I tell you take it, you say a big smile, but in the back of your head.
Well, here's the
When you're
thing.
in your quiet space,
You
Right,
yes.
feel the stress.
Mhm.
What has to change is the individual response. The
Right.
individual response is, look, you have every right as my friend to speak to me using words that hurt my feelings. And you know good and well you mean to hurt my feelings because you know good and well what you're saying.
But
I, as the
mhm.
individual,
Mhm.
I have to set different boundaries about myself. I have to decide if I'm going to have a conversation with that person and say, yo, I hear you, you can say what you want with your mouth, but if you and I going to be partners, don't ever talk to me like that again. That is
right,
setting a boundary. If
right,
that person continues, you know that person is not your person. And you have a decision to make if you're going to be dealing with that person. That's the only way you can deal with that. You change your boundaries. Because to not have boundaries means you will allow people to just keep saying what they're saying and they didn't feel any burn back from you. They need to feel a little pain back. And the pain might be you checking them in front of everybody else and saying, yo, I understand that, but them pat fin of yours there, bro. You need to go and do a couple squats. You understand? They have to feel a little fire back from you. Or you have to say, yo, that's your mouth. You can say what you want. I appreciate you. You have a good sense of humor, whatever, but don't do me not like that in front of other people. I'm not feeling that. Maybe you don't mean to hurt me, but I don't like it. You understand? You must set up a wall. Your next step is to make your boundary even tighter. If that person continues, that's a sign for you. That person is not your person.
But
well,
sometimes that individual probably had an experience. Say, for example, we know of someone who probably stole something, and they
Mm,
come to the village and everybody label them as a
mhm,
thief.
mhm,
They know that others know about the incident. So, of
mhm.
course, it's going to affect them. So, um, how can somebody like that deal with that tease?
Same thing.
Because where
Same thing,
where I
Chris.
might feel like I don't care, somebody else might harbor that, and eventually it develops into a form of illness for
I
that
get
person.
that. But that's this is the fix. The fix is expressing
Oh wow, that's it.
your true feelings about what just happened. Yo, man, I understand. I agree with you. I agree with you that I am a thief. I agree
Mhm.
with you that I am a thief, but I don't feel good. I don't feel comfortable. I don't want for you to tell me that in front of everybody else. You ask for what you prefer, what you need instead, and tell the person they have every right to continue. But if you continue, I just won't be around to hear it. I mean, we have zero control over what people do, but we can
Right.
definitely ask them for what we prefer. And depending on what they do, that is information for you to know if you need to be hanging around with these people.
well, I see Deb says that she avoids. I don't do. I'm not sure if Deb is a male or female, but Deb avoids Dominican activities in the U.S. because of the fact the size shaming, and they want to respect. They want to remain respectful. Deb, I invite you to come back home and visit us as well. Feel free to meet me. I will not size shame you.
Yeah, I think
But
that's a big that happens a lot, but I think you have zero control over people's actions.
Exactly.
But if you intend to maintain a relationship with these people, or if if you just want to, you're like, okay, I want to continue dealing with them, you check them. You tell them, okay, I understand. You want to make a joke. You're a funny guy. I get
yeah,
it. You're a funny guy. But I don't like people to tell me that. Or I paid my dues in court. You understand? Yeah, that's squash. That finished. We talk about that already. You understand?
that's
But that
something.
doesn't happen, sometimes it don't happen, the person gets so aggressive that they eventually start, being combative. They start fighting,
Come back.
and one thing can lead to the next. Sometimes that's what I'm saying. That is how probably is the right way to deal with it, but that's not always how persons deal with it.
That is
That's how
not
you
how people
have
deal with it. That's not how many people deal with
sorry,
it. You're right, and they do get into
right.
conflict. But I'm giving you a strategy. Okay, I'm teaching you a strategy for free that plenty people paying plenty money for. Make the
Hey,
other person
let's
right
hold it there. Let's
for
hold it.
real. Make the other person
Right.
right for whatever nonsense they're doing. It's their right. They can talk bad about you if they want. That's their mouth. It's free of charge for them to talk. But if you want to at least attempt to continue the relationship with them, which you don't, you can just say, if somebody has it in them to speak so negatively towards me, I want zero else to do with them. That can be your first boundary.
Right.
But if you intend to continue or to give the relationship a little hope, you can say you have a right to say what you want. That's actually even funny. But I don't like it. I don't like how I feel when you say it. What do you think about not doing that again? If a person has any positive feelings for you, they will say, oh, all right, man, I didn't know that was hurting your feelings. Okay, I won't do it again. But it will be a sign to you. It will be information for you if that person does it again. That person does not care about you. They mean to hurt you. So what will you do as a rational adult? Your job, if you want to maintain your mental health, is to cut it off, even if it hurts.
Well,
Or else say yes.
Bible talk about it.
Or else just say yes. The abuse is going to
continue. You cut it off.
Yeah, it's that simple. It's hard, but it's that simple.
Is there something known as religious related stress?
Oh. Of course. Of course. Oh my God. There's actually religious abuse. There's spiritual abuse. Do you know how many religious leaders abuse physically, sexually, emotionally their parishioners? And they still use the strong tie we have to our faith and to God to manipulate us. Do you know how many people do that? And they're still standing in front of people teaching in pulpits. So a lot of people now, they end up losing their faith in God, in people. A lot of people stay, but they're tormented. It is rampant. I mean, you see the number of priests who've been moved around. You know what I mean? It is rampant. It's rampant. But it's up to the individual to know their boundaries. You have to know you're worthy. And if somebody does something that hurts you, you have to do something about it. You have to say something about it. You have to take the next right step. That's it.
That's why education is important. You have to start in the school from a very young age to, instill that in the minds of the young people. When these things happen, they need to speak because a lot of them say nothing. So it continues over the course of the years. They say nothing. But if we continue to educate the children in the school and at home, in church, wherever in the community, when things like that happen, speak.
What about political abuse?
Oh boy.
That is rampant. That's the thing. It's rampant. One of the things I want people to understand about your mental health is it's not about what comes at you. It's about you deciding what to do with what comes at you. You see? And one of the best ways our body tells us something is wrong is our body hurts.
Right.
Your belly might hurt you, your head might hurt you. That's body, right? Or you might get sad, you might feel ashamed, you might feel guilty, you might feel angry. The pain is a signal to you that something is off. And your job is to investigate. Why am I feeling so uncomfortable? Think about it. Why? Okay, I don't know why I felt so bad when that person said XYZ, but think about it. Spend time with yourself and figure it out. No matter what was the person's intention, you felt uncomfortable. If you can, your job is to speak up about it. If you can, your job is to speak up about it. Okay, like Chris is saying, you always can if you think about it, except if somebody zips your lip. A lot of us are afraid to speak up because we're afraid of what else might happen or what threaten us with. But you have to decide again if you are worthy of proper treatment. It's not them that has to decide that, it's you. And you are going to know that what they're giving you is not good because you will feel it in your body. You're going to feel uncomfortable.
Chrissy, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Actually, this can eventually, if persons feel that something is wrong, say nothing about it, because yes, they were sworn to secrecy. Eventually, what happens in the adult stage, you find a lot of depressed adults, so it can start from there. You never get you never speak about it, you never get the help, it's wrong, you harbor it, and eventually it turns into a form of depression. So that's how mental illness can come even at an adult age,
based on things that happen to you throughout your life. Yeah.
It's interesting that this morning I just happened to drop on a podcast that was being conducted by a TED Talk that was done by Miss Monica Lewinsky. And she is a perfect example of someone who would have gone through some sort of abuse.
Yeah.
And she was shamed by society.
Yes.
And I'm guessing that she sought mental health and has come back now to the point where she is educating persons on protecting themselves from being. We don't need to rehash what she went through, but everybody should know the first time I say the name. But it affected her a lot, to the fact that she almost died. So I say that to say that some of our young people may be silently suffering.
Absolutely.
And we need to see. I mean, I would advise persons to talk to somebody. I'm no mental professional, but I would think that it's easier if you talk about it and you seek help than to let it go fester up in your mind. And probably you guys can elaborate a little more on that. I don't want to.
One of the biggest issue we having with the talking about it is the lack of trust. Right. A lot of persons feel that they cannot trust the person. They don't know who to speak with.
Right.
And so that's why they remain silent. Doesn't mean that you don't want to say something, Sometimes you want to go to your parents. And most of the time, they don't listen. They hear you, but they don't listen. You go to the school counselor, the school therapist, and then within a couple of days, you find that other people look at you differently because something was said. So it's the fear or the lack of trust that has allowed a lot of persons to not speak. Yes, some of them may be sworn to secrecy or threatened, but a lot of the persons don't trust people that they see as an older person they want to talk to. They don't trust the counselor. They don't trust nobody. If you understand what I mean.
Right.
So how can we deal with that? Because You go to you go to speak with somebody, and the first thing they tell you, don't worry, you can talk to me. You know what you tell me, they're not going anywhere. And within a couple of days, somebody's going to say something to you. It means that if you hadn't said it to anybody else, that person that you confided in was the one who spoke. So that is what you're hearing all the time. I'm not saying anything because I don't trust nobody, so I prefer to keep my thing to myself, you know. So I'm not sure how Dr. Triffy would elaborate on that, but
so my recommendation is to go to someone with a license. So go to someone who's got a license. Don't go to anybody. And I know that there are some clinicians in Dominica who have licenses, because your license is a professional will protect a license. If you go to just anybody willy-nilly, you could be hurting yourself even more. You could be doubly traumatized. You know, Carlos, you talked about political abuse. I think of something as, say, a parliamentarian using their position and their access, say, to money or to things. Or I can give you this opportunity. You can get this house. You can get this car. You can get this, you know, scholarship or whatever, to bargain with young people.
Sorry.
That is political abuse. That's using your power to take advantage of somebody who, that is their right as a citizen. This access to the scholarship, they have access to that as a citizen. It should not be coming. It shouldn't be coming with ties, you know. Like, I need your support, or else you will not qualify for this. Right. No, everybody should have equal access as citizens. The politician is not there for that. That's very gross and it's very disturbing. It's so ugly, you know. And I know a lot of people are experiencing.
That is rampant. And it is rampant. Yeah.
It's so disgusting. It makes my stomach turn. And a lot of people are not even aware that that's what they're experiencing. All they know is they feel ugly about it, because tomorrow they find out they're not the only one. 5 years down the line, many people are still dealing with this stuff. 10 years. Now they get into relationships. They have a lot of relationship problems, lack of trust. You talk about lack of trust of talking to people, even in the community, who they get their professionalism sometimes mixed up with their politics, you know, and or their religion, you know, and they lose sight of the client, the real client, the person coming for the healing and the help. I say go to somebody with a license. For people in Dominica, try and get a therapist outside of the country who doesn't know the rest. If it's so sensitive and you're very terrified, but please don't just stay with it and suffer alone. It's really not good for you. You know, and some people will protect other people at their expense. So they will, I will die so that they don't feel shame. Well, you have to reevaluate your sense of value, your sense of worth. If you know how valuable you are, and that you're just as important as the next person, you're just as special as the doctor who tried to do XYZ when all you went for was a medical exam. If you understand that, then you will find somebody to talk to. Because more often than not, even if you know, you're afraid to talk, when you're talking to a professional, they have learned how to help you to talk. Same like you were saying, I'm not going to bring my car to a psychologist.
Right.
No, the mechanic knows what to do when you go ping, 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 or pang, pang, pang. Same thing. Just bring yourself to the professional and allow them to guide you, to help you. Again, look for somebody with a license on the island. If you cannot find somebody with a license, there's so many opportunities outside of the country right now. Go Google if you're that serious about yourself. You understand? Put a little money on the side and take care of your mental health.
Guys, it was a nice afternoon. I mean, we started with a little hiccup, but well, we went through perfectly fine. I'm grateful for you guys' interventions and contributions to the program. Is there anything that you'd like to say as we wrap up?
I just want to remind people that you are worthy of feeling good in this body that life and God has offered you to have this experience in until you die and we go wherever we have to go. You understand? You're worthy. You're also responsible for your body. I likened our bodies to a car. You understand? You have to. We take care of our vehicles. We take care of our vehicles. Put the right gas in it. You understand? Service it. Give it its oil change, and it'll give you great service. It's not just about your physical health, because even if you're in the cutest, most fantastic body, and that brain or that heart emotionally is not doing good, life is not going to feel good. So you're worthy of the best. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. And this?
Yeah. Well, mental illness is real. We know that it can happen to the best of us. Doesn't matter in what area you are, what field you're in. So, of course, just as doctor said, you have to take care of yourself. You have to speak to somebody if you're experiencing some form of trauma, whatever it is that you're experiencing. You have to reach out for help. That's important. So, and don't overlook anything. It's important that you pay attention to even the smallest of uncomfortable feeling that you may have. It's important to take note of it, get help up for it, talk to somebody about it. And yeah, once you take care of yourself, then of course you're gonna have that nice car that doctor spoke about for that. I'm sorry for the disrupt during the show. I had to run off for a few minutes. Sorry about that.
It's fine. We all have our engagements. But allow me to thank our viewers, both on Teammunity platform and Dr. Triffy's platform, for tuning in. And so we let me just shout out a few. We had Indigenous Bushman, of course, Professor Alex Powell Bruno, Chiquito Thomas, Ricardo Sentami, Jan Joseph, Deb Prince, Marshall Lawrence, and of course, our sister Petra Carbon George. Always like to thank you all for tuning in to Teammunity Roundtable. Today we decided to touch on the topic of youth mental health in the changing world. And we had these beautiful ladies, well, one missing, but she had some internet issues. So I'm guessing that the next opportunity, she'll be back. So on behalf of the rest of the team, thank you all for your contributions and everybody for tuning in. I'm Carlos Charles, with Dr. Triffy Wallace and Dr. Chrissy Dupie. Good afternoon.
I'll take it. You sound like somebody I know with several doctorates.
No. Well, but the good thing is you are a real medical professional. If I elevated you, is because of your professionalism.
It's funny. That was funny. See what you do, Carlos?
Anyway, guys, it was a good one. I'll see you all next week. We'll just for another Teammunity Roundtable.
Thank you.
Thank you for the